This is Rowena Dooley asking Sol citizens to report for duty.
And greetings. Welcome back to Soul Citizens. I'm GriffinGamingRPG, and today is November the 24th, and we are so happy to have you join us today. And I am joined by two wonderful members of the Soul Citizens teams. Directly to my left and your right would be the one and the only JadeStarwatcher. Jade, how are you?
I am fine. Hello.
Hey, good. How's everything? You're doing good. Bitcoin's doing good. And
yeah.
I mean, hey, what can you say? Bitcoin's doing good, right? If you guys, y'all know Jade's
gonna
into the
probably
Bitcoin.
do better.
Yeah,
but I don't give. It's not financial advice.
Yeah, I know. But you always go for the ride. I mean, you've been on it for a little while, so you've been keeping an eye on things. So that's great. I'm glad things are going well for you.
It's a long-term investment from my point
Best
of view.
way to look at it.
It's for my retirement when Social Security's completely gutted.
Yep.
Sorry.
And next to her is the one and the only SeriousFun. Serious, how are you?
I'm good. I have a cold today, so I'm thinking about my Social Security, making sure stuff is right. But,
oh boy, you guys, I'm telling you, I got y'all started today.
No, it's a blessing to be here. I think this topic is timely, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to talk about it with the community.
Absolutely. And we're happy that you guys are here joining us today. We hope you're doing well. Those of us who are over here in North America, in the States, particularly the Midwest or the northern part of the country, we're starting to get our weather changes. So Captain Serious, I know how you feel, brother. The cold is here, and I'm trying to adjust to it. But we have warm hearts, warm heads, and a hot conversation to talk to you guys about today, which is Update 4.0. Now, I know you're saying, wow, you guys are talking about that, and it's not even out. Well, it's in and out, right? We've been having it in the PTU, we've had it in the PTU, and even though right now we're in 324.3, is that right? 0.3 in live?
Yep.
Yes.
0.3?
Yep.
Yeah.
The IAE patch, we can call it, right?
Yeah, the IAE patch. We are obviously looking forward to 4.0. And this is something that our community has been curious about, wondering about. Everything from last year's CitizenCon up to now has been focused in on us moving into this next level of development with Star Citizen. And so today we're going to be covering that, even though we don't have it necessarily in our hands just yet, even though we have played it, even though we played around in it. We want to talk about it a little bit so that some of you who may not have the opportunity to go on EPTU and test it out or try it out, out. Maybe we can answer some questions for you. I know that Jade has thoroughly been in the pyro aspects of the game. SeriousFun has stepped into it. I tried to step into it. So they're going to have way more information than I am this week, but we're going to do that today. So we want to give a shout out to everybody who's here today. Thank you guys once again for joining us on this Sunday, because you could be any place else, but you're here with us, and we love you for that.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk to you guys about, and maybe you guys can share what you heard, there was an announcement right in October. I think it was the October 30th roadmap report that came from Jake, and they stated, and I'll read to you what it was. They said upon review of support required for server meshing, pyro, and general stability of 4.0, we made the choice to temporarily remove several deliverables from the 4.0 release to free up necessary engineering bandwidth to prepare for launch. The first includes engineering gameplay, life support, fire hazard, fire extinguishers, charge and drain, and transit refactor. We're aware of many of you were looking forward to these features, especially engineering gameplay, but rest assured that we're committed to pulling these back in as soon as possible. And then they go into this whole thing about, meanwhile, several features that were planned for Alpha 4.0 have been pulled forward to 3.24.2, such as the new vehicle HUDs, the MFDs, network, additional player customization, the multi-tool updates, as those were far along enough for us to bring them to you all sooner rather than later. Additionally, the addition of Resource Network allowed us to partially deliver on some of the core engineering gameplay functionality in the form of the updated power management MFDs, with more to come. Therefore, the following cards have been removed, and we're going to get to those cards in just a second. But one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, do you think that people, even though certain items, I think there were 7 items that got removed, there were things that they brought forward into 3.24? Do you think that made a difference for people, or do you think it was just because everything was so focused on 4.0 that's where everybody's head was? And I'll go to you, Jade, first on that.
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. I mean, I try to take the pulse of the community, but it's been really hard with 4.0 and with what was talked about. I mean, like Sitogi in chat, and he definitely represents a segment of the community. But I think most people are happy to see that we're gonna get 4.0 this year.
Okay, fair enough. SeriousFun, what about you?
Yeah, I think that, for me, I guess I'm representative of a group of people that sort of hear CIG and have enough experience with CIG to locate certain things in certain ways, and as a result, I was okay. I have always felt as if 4.0 was pyro and server meshing. Part of the rod for CIG's own back is when they say things like deliverables instead of possibles, right? When they say 4.0 instead of the 4.0 branch, right? But I've been around long enough to know that deliverables are possibles, and 4.0 is the 4.0 branch. So I am very comfortable with the idea that they took a look at the suite of things that they wanted to bring to the initial release of 4.0 and said, what can we bring or bring forward? Not only MFDs, but like to your point, the pieces of the resource network that inform like power management, stuff like that, and what is going to have to get more time, right?
Okay.
Because we want to do it right. When Jay talks about the pulse of the community, the community is not a monolith, but I continue to have this theory of the case that there was something existential around this idea of getting past the 10-year mark. 10 is a big number for our civilization. 10 fingers, 10 toes, space 10 counting system, top 10. And post the 10-year mark, there's been a different type of consternation for those that receive news in this sort of plus minus way, in this sort of binary way around CIG's outcomes. For me, continue to be on the journey. So for me, as Carbon Tales is saying in the chat, 4.0 was always server meshing and Pyro. Get that right because it's so fundamental, and then we can layer on the other stuff as we go.
Okay. Yeah, I sometimes wonder if the importance of server meshing is not understood, maybe. I think that understanding the impact of what server meshing is supposed to do in this game, I wonder sometimes if even I and we completely know why, when they say that they had to pull things back for the sake of bandwidth, in order to deliver server meshing, I guess in its first tier level for us to be able to use, in the sense of going from Stanton to Pyro. And I don't know, maybe there's been so much hype about this idea of Pyro, and maybe the fact that people got a taste of it last year when they went in, and things like the flares were there, and that's what they experienced. And so now they look at going into Pyro and say, oh, it's not there, and there's a level of disappointment that's taken place. And I can understand some of that if that's what they experienced. But I don't know. I kind of want to lean toward what is the greater good. And I would hope that CIG is very conscious of the fact that when they make these decisions, that they're not easy decisions that they make. And there's a couple of alternatives. One of them is that we don't release the patch. We wait longer and we don't give them 4.0. I don't know what the time frame is. There's all types of inside and outside bets and gambling about when 4.0 will come out. Will we see it? I've had some people say it'll never come out. And then there are people who are first quarter next year, second quarter next year. Some people are saying before the end of the year. I don't know what the best way is to deliver. Do they keep it in there? And there are plenty of people that would say, listen, keep it till it's ready. And then there are other people who are like, no, we need some stuff because we've been sitting in this for a long time. It's like, which way does CIG win? They
don't.
And that might be the case.
They can't.
And maybe that's the case. And maybe that's the case. Maybe it isn't about winning. Maybe it is about, this is what we have to do. And there are times
or they do win. They win every single time, but it's always a partial win.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and there's always going to be a segment.
Yeah,
with some segment of the population, they're going to lose.
Yeah, that could be it.
And for people missing the solar flares, the flares, I'll just say this: all flare stars go through cycles. There's quiet times and there's active times. So right now, if you need that headcanon, we're in a quiet time for Pyro, and we'll be in an active time in the future.
Thank you for bringing the science.
The other side of what you're saying is that's important is, and I get that for folks that aren't playing or cannot play 4.0, they aren't playing and cannot play 4.0, right? Until it's out online, it's not really out, right? And I think that's an entirely fair point, regardless of some of the bets that have been made.
Yeah.
But I'm playing 4.0 right now.
Yeah.
So it is, and it will continue to be, right? I'm playing it, right? 4.0 is present, right? It can be played by some percentage of the Star Citizen population, right? Doing that in this phase, the same way that we were doing it with 322, 323, is a step along the journey. When something comes from out of Evocati and gets to PTU, for me, I experience that as a material evolution of the patch, right?
Yeah.
And so now that it's in PTU and I can play it, any existential sense of dread or sense of will we get this patch or what will it be, sort of fades away from me. The same way that it does for people who get it into live, right? And so that happens in stages as well.
Okay. Well, let's hit some of these topics real quick. listen, I've been looking forward to some of these in particular, life support and engineering. Those are ones that I was definitely looking forward to, obviously, because of the gameplay aspects of them. I'm sure you guys, I know Jade, I know you're a big techie person too. SeriousFun, I know you are too. Obviously, these would introduce another level of consideration for people in their ships and when they have crew. Definitely something that
this is the Star Trek of it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, we had Fire Hazard. I was definitely looking forward to see who get burnt up on their ship. And Colossal, right? Colossal always want to set himself on fire, right? I know you remember that, Jade, right?
I do.
You remember that, right? Colossal running to the river to put himself out. And even though it was nice to see that they did put fire extinguishers in. They're not working, of course. They're still glued to the wall, but the new fire extinguishers are in with their refill systems and everything else. So whenever that gets kicked in, that would be another nice piece. And then the other last of the 7 items that were there, Jade, you just talked about the solar bursts. Charge and drain, which is another form of gameplay for missions that folks wanted to be able to do. And then the transit refactor. Of course, we've been waiting on the trams and elevators. We just had a long conversation about elevators the other day.
Kill us. Yeah.
Yes. Having the stability in the game. Some days you get on, it's not a problem. Other days you're like, okay, there's no elevator. It's even happening now for that matter. And obviously some of these things have been around for a while. Some of them are new things that were going to be implemented. But CIG has stated that these are to follow. And so hopefully by 4.1, 4.2, we'll start to see those things get dropped in. But we wanted to acknowledge this, guys, because we didn't want to, we know there were some people in the community who felt a little disappointed that these items weren't in. But we also want to let you know that there are a lot of good things that are coming in that should keep us busy, at least for a little bit until this stuff comes in. So we're going to start tackling some of those now. I'm going to kind of defer to Jade and SeriousFun on these because I did not get a chance to get into Pyro, and I'll talk about that when we get to the jump point section. So anything that they want to share about this, they can talk about. And those of you in the chat, if there's something you want to share, feel free to drop it in. But I'll read this first one here. Space stations, contested zones, our location feature coming to Pyro space stations, introducing FPS gameplay of various layouts tailored for this purpose. The zones will feature a progression system requiring tokens to unlock different zones, giving access to loot inside. Collecting all the tokens will allow a player to open the final door and claim the grand prize. SeriousFun, I'll go to you first on this. Did you get a chance to check out any of the contested zones yet?
I have not checked out the contested zones. What I can speak to is the first part of that, which is space stations, right? I know we have another segment for this in our conversation, so I won't say too much here. But when we get to that segment, I'm gonna say a lot.
Okay.
Because I've been to a lot of the different space stations, but I have not dived into the contested zones.
Okay. Jade, how about you?
I have, I think I stumbled upon it. I followed somebody down into one of the maintenance elevator, and it took me down to this level where like there were Copian, there were NPCs, there were players, everybody was shooting at each other, and I was just like, this is great. Yeah.
I watched Togi go in one day, and they were giving him a little bit of a tough time. And I don't remember Togi, maybe you can say in chat, I know he's here. Were you fighting NPCs or fighting players? Because I know he was in there by himself, and it seemed like there was like maybe 2 or 3 other people. And I don't know if they were NPCs or whether they were, players. Are contested zones completely player PvP? Oh, he's just NPCs. Okay, they were NPCs. Okay. Yeah. And they were kind of, they were challenging. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a just go in and mow them down kind of thing. But I didn't get a chance to go either. Like I said, I haven't been in them yet. Do you guys think that this will be a very, like platforms in Stanton over at Orson were fairly popular. What do you guys feel about these? You think these will be something that keep people occupied?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I watched Togi. I was going to say, I watched Togi play as well. I wasn't sure whether he was in a contested zone or not.
It was challenging, Togi, because you were running. You were running away, so it was challenging. I saw you.
You were at least engaged. Yes. And the thing that Jade describes with all the different facets of different pieces of features and gameplay that we've had before, and the leveling that CIG lays out, when those things work well, I think it will absolutely engage a large segment of our community. So I'm excited to see those continue to get refined. Jade, you were getting ready to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think people really like these, probably even more than the platforms, because if I am not mistaken, these will require like a mission to do, right? You can, and they're right on the space station where you spawn in at, right? So for people that don't know, in Pyro, there are no cities or no landing zones. Your spawn points are these space stations, right?
Right.
And a bunch of these stations have these contested zones. So basically, you don't even have to get in a ship. You can wake up, get out of bed, and go, and the gameplay's right there on the station.
Yeah.
Right.
And to that point, and I know I was pulling Togi's chain, but Togi he did say that when he was in there, the game was running funny. So I get that. So if I understand contested zones, basically what will happen is anybody can come in there. Your group could be in there, Jade's group could be in there, my group could be in there, and we're all trying to get to this grand prize, along with the fact that we've got to deal with NPCs and other players. That's basically what it is, right? For the you're trying to hold down that zone, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's amazing when everything's working.
Okay.
Yeah, and those NPCs are serious.
Okay.
They aren't to be trifled with at all.
Okay. Cool. All righty. Asteroid bases. Implementing new asteroid bases. I'm sorry, Jade, you can read this one. I don't read that one. You can read it.
Yes, asteroid bases. So we've got these new asteroid bases, and
you can read this. We can read what's on the screen.
Yeah,
if you want
the description.
Just read that.
It's implementing new asteroid bases scattered across space in asteroid clusters, gas clouds, and other areas of Pyro. From exploration type gameplay to mission based locations, these bases include both constrained interiors for potential FPS conflicts, as well as space combat while reaching or fleeing from the location. And I know the first time I jumped to Pyro in Evocati, the first place I went, because I was looking for a place to refuel, because I couldn't refuel at the gateway station before I went through the jump point. I was looking for a place to refuel, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's this station thing by this asteroid cluster. I'll just go there. I come out of Quantum, and immediately I'm being attacked. I'm like, who's shooting me? Like, I'm thinking, like, this is Evocati. Nope, it was NPC ships. And they actually flew like player ships, which is why I was like, this has got to be some player. Long story short, they disabled put me in soft death in Zeus, and I EVA'd over to the station, and they look great. There was like just this destroyed hangar, and I had to actually go prone to like get inside the station, and I did, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna see this, but of course the elevator was broken because it's Evocati, right? So, but it felt like something out of a movie. The whole thing was crazy.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, the strength of these asteroid bases, the strength of Pyro in general, is another space to discover something for the first time, right? And so the asteroid base atmosphere, right? Just and some of them, the gas clouds or the asteroid clusters that you got to navigate to get to the base it's an incredibly beautiful and compelling layout. Then you get there and you're trying to figure out for this particular base, how do I get in? Right? What does it mean to go in? Right? What am I going to find? And so asteroid bases was one of the first things I went to because there are other games that I've played that have asteroid bases, right? Elite Dangerous, right? For example, developed some asteroid bases. But this was a lot more asteroidy to me, right? Like raw, like randomly rugged and rocky asteroids, and you sort of felt what Pyrotechnic Amalgamated was getting at by trying to put something on there, right? It was just very raw and brutal, and going in has been really interesting. To Jade's point, and to the point that some others are making in the chat, right? When everything's working, right? This is one of those things that whenever. But I will argue that our citizen continues to be compelling because even the journey to get to the thing that you want to work is still a beautiful journey. Right? It's still a very interesting journey. It's still replete with art and some of that presence that you want in a game. It has been very interesting to begin to examine for the first time these asteroid bases.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. Next up, this is where I'm going to lean on you guys definitely more, because when I went into Pyro, as I said, on this particular patch, I did not get to go to Pyro. I'll again tell you the story of what happened with that. But when we went in previously, or post CitizenCon of last year, I did get to go in. And the only thing I got to do was visit Checkmate and what's the other station? The one that sounds like a cemetery name.
Obituary.
Obituary, thank you. Those are the only two places I got to go. I didn't get to visit one planet, one moon, or anything last time. So I'm going to lean on you guys on this one. Sirius, why don't you read the description here for Pyro 1, please?
Sure. Planets of Pyro, Pyro 1. Pyro 1 is the first planet from the sun of the Pyro system. Its thick, high-pressure atmosphere hides a strange landscape beset by powerful winds and lightning strikes. Under the clouds, there is an ecosystem of plants and animals that endure its extremely high temperatures, even during powerful stellar flares.
Now, I would like to have some fun with this, and that's going to be I'm going to pit Jade and Cap against each other, SeriousFun against each other, because there's a scientific side to this where I'd love to hear Jade's opinion on when we look at how they developed the system. How does it look? Does this like this feels right, or whether we've gone into fiction? And then SeriousFun, you may want to cover the fiction side of it and talk about any positives you see with the direction they may have gone. Because like I said, I visited none of these locations, so I have no comment on them. So Jade, why don't you give us the reality side? Because you've tested this not just recently, but also because of Evo. So give us some thoughts about Pyro 1.
So Pyro 1 is a very interesting planet. And it is the planet that they showed us a long time ago with a huge storm. Like a cyclone or hurricane, in the clouds. It's not dynamic, but it just looks really cool. Then you get underneath, and the place just looks like death, right? Like nothing could survive there at all. Like it's not for us. It's it's for the inhabitants, those flora and fauna that are there, that evolved there. I love that CIG's made a hostile planet, but it's not hostile enough. If it's too hostile, I don't think they should be putting, large life on it. But, I look at this like, okay, we have systems in real life around M dwarfs and K dwarfs that are very, let's say, compact, right? Where you have planets that are all orbiting within, roughly within the circumstellar habitable zone, or the green zone, or the Goldilocks zone, right? And this would be something that would be just on that inner line, right? Just on that edge. Yeah, just riding that edge. It's quote habitable, but not for us, right? Okay. And so in your Moby Glass, it says it's not habitable or inhabitable, right? But it is for the life that's there, and that's an important distinction.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Sirius, did you get a chance to take look at Pyro 1?
Oh yeah. There is a post on Reddit that describes the weather phenomena that Jane began with by calling it an evercane, right? This massive, what looks like a hurricane formation that sits near the pole of Pyro 1, and is just presents itself as super scary.
Have either of you gone down there? Have either of you gone down to that thing?
Gone underneath it? Yeah.
I'm an explorer, of course I have.
I'm just curious. Okay, I was just curious. Okay, all right, go ahead, Sirius. I was just curious because I wanted to ask anybody that ever gone to it. Okay.
And there is community, there are locations, there and it might be the case that from a science standpoint, like this is too close to the sun. This isn't really what I find it. I think that the shift that CIG made around Pyro, and Jade might find this as Jade might hear this and go heresy, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that the shift that CIG made to do more with more of the planets in Pyro, even though that wasn't necessarily the what we know of the science around stars like this, was that gameplay compromised? Right now, could they have gone in different gameplay directions and kept more of the science? Probably, right? But I understand why they did what they did here, right? So there's a location on Pyro 1, for example, called Rustville, right? That's one of the locations I went to. And when you get to Pyro 1, you're looking at it from the outside and it looks like almost like an Earth-like because it's so blue with the white clouds. When you get down, daytime is blue, right? And so when Jade said it looks like hell, it doesn't look like a red, orange, fiery hell. It looks like a blue, like hell froze over type of hell for me.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And you do get the sense of, first of all, how could anybody or anything live here? And then you would get this other sense of people have forged something here, right? And then what does that look like, right?
Okay.
Some of the rock formations are very interesting and unique. Yeah, so when we got an opportunity, I began with Pyro 1 and worked my way back out to Terminus and Ruin Station. So yeah, I started with Pyro 1 and found it pretty compelling, this blue hellscape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Pyro 2, Monox. Monox is the second planet from the sun of the Pyro system, nicknamed Monox for the deadly carbon monoxide in its atmosphere. It is a temperate climate and was seen as a viable candidate for terraforming shortly after its discovery. However, its proximity to the system's volatile sun made it dangerous for human inhabitation, and the United Nations of Earth, UNE, refused to clear it for terraformation, instead allowing for corporations to harvest its natural resources. Undeterred by the potential risk, outlaws eventually took up residence on the planet when the last corporations pulled out of Pyro in the 26th century. Jade, Monox, thoughts?
Yeah, Monarchs. I have fond memories of being on Monarchs in the Pyro playtest. But about the planet itself, yeah, I like that. I like the design of it. I like the fact that it's a temperate planet. It's not too hot, not too cold, but it's also got a deadly atmosphere, right?
Right.
These type of planets are probably more common than any of us imagine in real life, right? Where you got a terrestrial planet, looks pretty cool, looks like it could be somewhere you'd want to live, but nah, the carbon monoxide atmosphere. I mean, you want to breathe the tailpipe of a car? Take your helmet off, right? So, yeah, but I do also like that there aren't a bunch of outposts on like Pyro 1 and Monox, which I could see where CIG would be tempted to do that, but they kept it somewhat plausible. Well, these are places that aren't somewhere that most people would want to live. They have, their own environmental challenges. There probably shouldn't be a million outposts on either one of those planets.
Okay. Serious thoughts?
It's very similar, right? Very similar in that you want one of those planets. You want a few of those planets where you forget to put that helmet on, and that's going to get you.
Yeah,
right. That's going to get you. So Pyro 2 for me represented that idea, right? Of Monox is dangerous, right? The hue on Monox for me, when you think about like when your first reaction to a planet, Pyro 1 is this blue. Monox is like gold, right? Like gold brown, right? And a lot more mountainous, right? When they talked about ultimately getting a little bit better cliff technology in, I thought that one of the planets it could impact first would be Pyro 2, right?
Okay.
Was the way that I received it. So the same way that you have sort of these mountain vistas and then these flatlands on Microtech, but the palette is sort of snowy with grasslands. Pyro 2 is these mountainous, these brown, golden mountains, and then this brown flatlands in front of them. That's the way I experienced a lot of my landings on Pyro 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
And again,
brown.
to Jade's point, real quick. And again, to Jade's point, not a lot of sediments on either, which makes sense. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, it's brown and red, and if you've ever been to the southwest of the U.S., it has some areas have that look.
Yeah.
Now, there's no Jade. You mentioned that there aren't a lot of settlements or location or PO. Well, there are POIs, but there's no. Are there settlements there? Because you said that you noticed that there's not a lot of them there.
Oh yeah, there's outposts and things, but there's not a lot of it, right? So like if you compare it to a Microtech or Hurston, there's not a million things there, or even in Bloom, right? Which we're going to get to next.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. See,
it's clear that they really wanted to differentiate between Bloom, which we'll talk about in a minute, and like these first two planets, they wanted to make a statement about the habitable nature of them. There isn't a lot of distributed across the whole planet locations, right? Just a couple.
Okay. Oops, I'm not sure why that popped up. Give me 1 second here. Change that back to where it should be. Monox. Okay, there we go.
Now, when we get to base building and everything else, land in these places too. Right? Life would be hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. If you don't,
and or get away from everybody, they can get away from everybody on Pyro 1 or Pyro 2.
Okay. And I was going to ask you too. I'd be really curious to know which places you guys can see base building being a thing as we go through these. Okay. So if there's places you think that definitely this is someplace people should consider or that they probably will consider, then let me know. Jade, why don't you read Pyro 3 since you mentioned it? Bloom.
Sure, Bloom. Bloom, Pyro 3 is the third planet from the sun of the Pyro system. Cold, but naturally habitable. It became the epicenter of mining endeavors in Pyro. Pyrotechnic Amalgamated and other corporations constructed multiple staging sites, employee barracks, and processing centers that were in use until the cost of their maintenance could no longer be offset by mining profits. Abandoned when the last cycle of active corporations in Pyro ceased operations there in the late 26th century, they were claimed by squatters, outlaws, and former miners who lacked the means to return to the United Empire of Earth.
Okay, Jade, this is one of the planets that we know did have a major change to it from its original lore. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So originally the Pyro system was this really inhospitable system. And I believe they made it that way because, this was way back before we were going to have these landable, explorable planets. I think it was just going to have space stations or something in it. And, the planets would be there. But for people that remember back before 3.0, they'd have been, just something to look at, right? You couldn't land on them, right? That was, I think, the original vision for Pyro, if I'm not mistaken, way, way back when. But, as they developed the planet technology to create planets, they decided to make them more interesting. And I'm fine with that. I mean, they changed even, the central star from a red dwarf, a M-class red dwarf, to a K-dwarf, which is in between a red dwarf and a G-class star like our sun, or in lore, Stanton is also a G-class star. And we, in real life, think K-dwarfs actually may be more habitable or contain more habitable planets than G dwarfs, and they're more frequent. They're more they have a higher occurrence frequency in the universe. So there's more of them than there are stars like our sun. And they last longer. Their lives are longer. So yeah, it makes sense that they changed Pyro to one of these stars and then gave it, a habitable planet like Pyro 3.
Okay. Sirius, you been to Bloom?
Bloom is gorgeous. You want to talk about a planet that's just easy to think this is where people might want to have a base if they're going to have a base in Pyro. Bloom is going to be inhabited.
Okay.
Bloom is incredible looking. If you all remember the Todd Pappy, it might have been 2019 Citizen Con, where we first saw the Meridian Paint 400i, and they took it down to a location with that yellow grass, and it looked a little Tatooine, and they talked about the different ways to enter the building. And those cloud formations, that was Bloom, and that's Bloom today. It is beautiful. It is an incredible experience. And sometimes people, you hear somebody talk like that and you go, well, they're overselling it. And by the time I get there, I'm not going to feel, you're going to feel the same way. Trust and believe. Bloom is gorgeous. And as a result, you see a lot more settlement on Bloom, right? There's a lot more, there's still not a lot compared to like Hurston or Microtech, but there's a lot more compared to Pyro 1 and Pyro 2. Okay. In terms of places to visit and communities with which to engage. So.
Okay, cool. All right, Pyro 4. Sirius, would you read that one for us?
Sure. Pyro 4 is the outermost moon of Pyro 5. Astronomers theorize that it was once the fourth planet from the sun of the Pyro system. At some point before humans discovered Pyro, a massive celestial body collided with Pyro 4, catastrophically warping its landscape, destroying its atmosphere, and knocking it into the orbit of nearby gas giant Pyro 5. Although the tectonic activity that resulted from this impact has quieted and a new atmosphere has formed, Pyro 4 is far from stable. It is on a long, slow collision course with Pyro 5, and one day will either crash into it or break up into a ring.
Jade, got thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is my favorite planet now in Star Citizen. But I'll get into the scientific aspects of this. And is this plausible? The answer is yes. It is plausible that a collision could occur between two major planets. In fact, we think that's how we ended up getting our moon, in the early years of our solar system's, formation, right? So this kind of thing could happen. What I love about Pyro 4 is that it's a ringed terrestrial planet. It's the first ringed terrestrial planet in Star Citizen that I was able to visit. And the Pyro system has two. We'll get to the other one later. It almost, it's beautiful. It's got a great set of beaches. It's got an ocean. There's NPCs that are walking around without, spacesuits outside. And it makes me think that I'm just going to try and get this ball rolling. CIG, make it habitable. You want to get a lot more people interested in Pyro 4, just give it a breathable atmosphere so we can breathe like the NPCs that already are. It's also got pretty high mountains. I took an image on top of one of them and I posted it on Reddit, and I don't know, got almost like 1,000 upvotes. Because it was like I'm on top of the mountain and I'm above the cloud layer, right? And I know a lot of people want it, big mountains. So it's got that. It's got beaches. It's very. It looks like a place that people will definitely want to base build. Between Pyro 3 and Pyro 4, they definitely want to base build. The other thing is, Pyro 5 looms large in the sky of Pyro 4, right?
Oh, wow.
So
nice
you get that
scenery,
you get that sci-fi thing of here's this, gas giant planet.
Right.
And you're on a ringed planet, so you can see the ring from the surface, right?
Oh, wow.
And there's a gas giant. It's very sci-fi.
Oh, that sounds very cool. Yeah, I'm jealous.
But it could exist in real life. There could be a planet like that somewhere out there.
Yeah. Sirius, did you get to go to Pyro 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to Pyro 4. In fact, it was like 21 days ago that Jade posted her pictures of her standing on her ship looking over these beaches, and it almost changed my plans. My plan was to go from Pyro 1 all the way back out. But when I saw that, I was like, maybe I need to start over at Pyro 4 because Pyro 4 looks really, really cool. It looked like almost an integrated set of biomes squeezed together. But I did end up at Pyro 4, and Jade is right about how it feels to be on it, right? So at almost any location that you're on Pyro 4, you get to look up and see those rings, right? Which, I don't know, like I grew up on the East Coast in New Jersey. But I spent some time living in Colorado, and you start waking up and you have the mountain range, you have the Rocky Mountains that are in your periphery all the time. And after a year or two of doing that, when you move back and you don't have that, it's like there's this thing, right, that became a part of your life. That's what it feels like it would be to be on Pyro 4 all the time. You would have these rings that sort of you'd become used to, but they're very cool. And this was the system, Griff, that I asked you about. I'm like, did they change? And you were like, no, I think it's Pyro 4 as part of Pyro 5. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked back into the history that you list here that we just read, and that lore combined with it being activated on Pyro 4 makes it, I think, almost as compelling as Pyro 3. I think the difference, and Jade alluded to it, is it's not breathable, right? So ultimately, only a certain type of community can be built there unless CIG changes that. But it is a compelling vision. Now, the idea of tectonic activity, I didn't really feel that. There isn't a gameplay feature or system in place for that.
Right.
But the awe of the rings and the awe of Pyro 5 over your heads, like this heavenly body that you can see, is very cool.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, speaking of Pyro 5, I added this to the sheet, guys, so just refresh your sheet if you don't see it there. Pyro 5 is the fourth planet from the sun in the Pyro system. It was given the classification of Pyro 5 when researchers came across another strong evidence that its outermost moon once maintained a stable orbit around the system star between Pyros 3 and 5. When it was struck by an unknown celestial body, it was knocked into Pyro 5's gravitational field, a sphere of influence. Residents and travelers through the Pyro system are known to harvest hydrogen from Pyro 5's green and yellow atmosphere. I'm really curious to see what that place looks like. Jade, is that the scoop with Pyro 5?
Yeah. It's got a yellow green, like really fluffy cloud atmosphere. If you think of Crusader as like pink and blue, think of this as yellow and green. In fact, when I came out in the 890 jump, yes, I did take an 890 jump full of ships and vehicles. I had like almost 20 things in there. I had to do it for science, right?
Right.
See if I could get it all through the jump point.
Okay.
When I ended up going there, the ambient light of Pyro 5 made the ship look like I had a green paint. Like,
wow.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Wow. That's interesting. So this is a candidate for quote unquote starfarers, right? To be able to pull hydrogen, possibly? Is that what this might be for? Fuel?
I think so. I think so. I mean, that gameplay isn't in yet.
Right.
I don't necessarily know that it would have to be, but if they
curious.
do put it in,
because they mentioned about them harvesting from here. That's why I was curious whether or not this would be a place that Starfarer owners should look to as a possible place to, when that game plays in, of course.
more so than Crusader, I think, because it's just the atmospheric composition of it. This would be a good place to fuel up your Starfarer in the future.
Okay. Sirius, did you get to visit Pyro 5?
Yeah, and so I feel differently about Pyro 5 than I think others do. I felt like felt like vomit. It looked vomit colored to me. When you roll up on it, right? When you roll up on it,
Mm-hmm.
that green and yellow is like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and the nature of it as a gas giant felt suitably different from the nature of it of Crusader as a gas giant.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the cloud formations and the materials that make up the elements that make up that particular gas giant felt different. Not necessarily better or worse, just different.
Okay.
Um, and this was the first place I died in the system, trying to go down into the clouds and keep going down,
Mm.
and just to see what would happen.
Okay. Okay.
But you can get into the clouds of the gas giant on Pyro 5. You just, keep going down, you just die.
Gotcha.
And but I am not a fan of the color of it up close.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more a fan of how it presents from Pyro 4
Mm-hmm.
than I am up close. But everything different strokes for different folks, right? Yeah. This one for me though was like, yeah, I'll be happy to keep moving on.
I mean, like, I get that you don't like the look of it, but you have to think about it from just like you want it to be somewhat plausible. Yeah, I mean, we know of gas giants that have ammonia atmospheres, right?
Right.
Ammonia,
Right.
hydrogen, and I could totally see a yellow-green gas giant with ammonia, maybe sulfur, chlorine, and hydrogen, right? Like,
Jade,
so why not?
If you don't mind me asking, when it comes to scale comparison between this and Crusader, are they equal in size? Is this a smaller than that one?
Yeah, it felt equal, but I don't know. Then it also felt bigger. I didn't actually measure it, right?
Okay.
I was so like enthralled by, I need to get to those moons, that I didn't actually try to figure out if it's much bigger than
But it's
Crusader.
definitely a gas giant, but you just we don't know if it's bigger or the same size or smaller. I was just curious.
Yeah, I didn't even fly down into its clouds.
Okay.
Like I've not really gone into it. And I should also say this, right, from the lore, just to set expectations for people. Crusader is sort of the exception, right, as far as gas giants go. Most gas giants in lore don't have anything in them, right? Other than the gases themselves. And I mean, that's for good reason. It just so happened that Crusader had this oxygen layer, and it was a low mass gas giant, so they could build ships there. But there's only one other gas giant in lore where there's like a station, and it's a Xi'an station. It's deep in the atmosphere. We don't even know how they were able to build it, but we can't go there, but they can. So that just sets some expectations for the future.
Cool. All right. Last but not least, Pyro 6. Jade, would you read that one?
Yes. Pyro 6. Terminus. Pyro 6 is the outermost world of the Pyro system. Its nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere is technically breathable, but contains high enough amounts of methane and carbon dioxide that it has a negative effect on one's health after extended exposure. Pyrotechnic Amalgamated placed their main hub of operations in orbit around Terminus, later abandoning the station when they left the system. And this is another example, right? So they made a semi-habitable world out of Terminus. Oh, and the other thing that's cool about this is it's another ringed terrestrial planet, right? Terminus is very interesting from that standpoint. Like, you have these two planets that are terrestrial, right? But they've got rings, and they maybe had, at one time, moons, right? That now have fallen within the Roche limit, and they've become a ring. In fact, we think that Earth at one time had a ring, as well. So, yeah, it's a place that I have not been to frequently. I've been there, I think, twice, and I definitely want to explore it more. I'm sort of like Terminus is like my saving it until live planet, because I want there to be something that I spend a lot of time checking out during live, and that's one of them, definitely.
Okay, cool. All righty. Serious Terminus.
Yeah. So you do sometimes you do that PTU reset and you recopy over your account. Maybe you've added something to your live account that you want in your PTU account. And when I did that most recently, I went back into the EPTU. I began out at the station that we'll talk about. That's next to Terminus, right? So after the first cut at this, having visited from the inside out all of the planets, I began. So I've done the opposite of what Jade's talked about in that. Since then, I've spent most of my time around Terminus, checking Terminus out. Terminus reminds me of a big moon, right? When you look at Terminus, it looks like our moon in terms of its color and experience. But we've got a ring around it, which is cool. Only a few derelict outposts. There's a lot of open space here. But the topography is, when you get down close to it, it's not really like the moon at all in that there are pools of things, right, which our moon doesn't have. There is an atmosphere, but it is, not breathable, but there is one. It obscures the rings when you get down close, and then you want to look up and see them. They're sort of diffuse with the light, particularly in the light. It's better on the dark side. But yeah, every planet and every body that I've experienced here is different from the other ones. And this one for me is the one that reminds me of our moon from a distance.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, we are right at the top of the hour. So we're going to take our commercial break now, but we're going to try and speed through some of these other ones that we have a little bit later. We still have the moons of Pyro that we want to cover for you guys. So we're going to ask that you guys would hang in here with us for just a moment. We're going to have a 1-minute commercial, and then you guys can come back and join us, and we'll continue on with our review of information about Update 4.0. So we'll see you guys in just a bit. Okay, hello to those of you who are here. Thank you for joining us today. Last weekend in November. No, it's almost the last week. Well, it's the last Sunday of November. Appreciate you guys being here today with Jade and SeriousSFun, myself, as we continue this discussion on Update 4.0. I know it seems like this is the Pyro show, but Pyro is such a big part of this 4.0, as SeriousFun mentioned earlier, along with server meshing. We're going to get to some of the other technical stuff in the latter part of the show. But thank you guys, as always, for your support and for you guys being here, supporting us financially through, social media, all the other good stuff that's out there. We will be making an announcement too, and I forgot to put it in. I got to make sure I do this serious. That next week will be our virtual bar Citizen. That'll be based on CitizenCon and IAE. So hopefully you guys can join us for that next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I will try to remember to put the information up in the stream before we close out today. And that's that. So I'm going to jump back into it. Okie dokie. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are back, and we're going to continue our discussion. We just got finished talking about the planets of Pyro, but now we're going to talk about the moons of Pyro. Or was it outposts? What if I got outposts? Wait a minute. Let me see what if I got. Did I put the moons? Maybe I didn't put the moons in. Hold on a second, guys.
You did.
I see them. Yeah, they're there.
No, you see them on the sheet, but I don't have them on the thing. Okay. I didn't put them into the show. I missed it. Okay. So I'm going to read these. We're going to read these to you guys. Okay. And then I'm going to let them talk about them because there's a lot more we have to cover. So I'm going to read the first one. Jade will read the next one in Serious. And then if there's any comments they want to see about any of them, we will do that. So let me read the first one, which is Ignis. Ignis is the innermost moon of the gas giant Pyro 5 in the Pyro system. The multiple canyons and dry riverbeds on its surface suggest that liquid water once flowed there in the distant past. Its frigid average temperature and deadly atmosphere of sulfur dioxide creates an unfriendly environment for those who lack proper protective equipment. Nonetheless, the moon sometimes sees visitors seeking to resupply their air reserves thanks to a small amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. I'll stop there first. Jade, Sirius, real quick, if you guys got anything to say about Ignis, did you go there or haven't been there yet?
I have been there.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there, and it is brown. It's a good vision of Pyro 5 from there.
Okay.
But I feel like the moons in general will be fertile ground for base building, and Ignis is one of them. But just very brown. A nice little brown, and then you get this like atmospheric haze across the horizon, and then when you look up, it's sort of like a bluish gray. But the compelling feature is seeing Pyro 5 in the skyline for me.
Okay. Jade, anything stand out to you about Ignis, or pretty much just a moon?
No, that's the thing about moons. They're not just moons.
I know.
Like, even if you just look at our solar system, right, and you look at like the major moons of Jupiter and Saturn, they're all very different from each other, all very diverse. And I love that CIG's taken that into Star
to make
Citizen.
them different.
Yeah,
and it just rocks out there in space.
Right, Ignis. It's not just a brown, rock. It's got some interesting geology, and it's a place that I think people that want a really scenic view of Pyro 5 will probably want to build. Definitely like in one of those deep canyons.
Yeah.
Or dry riverbed. You want to not be bothered, and put your outpost somewhere in a crevice there, like maybe. I don't know. But it's not where I would build, but it's definitely a place that I could see some players that just want to not be where everybody else is, like on Bloom or maybe Pyro 4.
Yeah. There are little hints that I wonder sometimes if it's just lore or whether they are clues to future gameplay mechanics. And one of them, for example, when we just talked about going down to Pyro 4 or 5, whichever one was the green yellow planet, and I mentioned about hydrogen collecting, right? Here you've got oxygen collecting, right? And I'm wondering, what does that mean when people have to go fill their reserves? What ship or what game mechanic needs that to happen? And so I'd be really curious to see if this gives people reason to come to this planet because they have to fill their oxygen reserve. Now what that means, don't know. But
what I heard in that where there there's going to be people who lack the status to go to any settlement or any station, right? That their reputation is such because this is it is lawless, but it is not orderless, right? And the order is rough and ready for the stations, and there'll be other reputation requiring factions throughout the system. But if you don't have any of those things, and your ship says, "Hey," the life support says, "Hey, we're about to be out of oxygen,"
right?
It sounds like they've thought about a mechanic for those who want to stay totally outside of any systems, even of outlaws in Pyro, but can still replenish.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would just not recommend, again, don't take your helmet off, because if you want to know what sulfur dioxide smells like, think of rotten eggs. So you probably don't want to deal with that, but it's probably a good place to restock the little bit of oxygen that's in the atmosphere. And I just want to reiterate this. I wish we could still see the atmospheric composition of these places when, opening our Moby-Glass. It's fine to read about it in the Galactopedia, but being able to see it in game on your Moby-Glass.
Well, our Mobies have it. It's just whether they're going to implement it. Right. Because I would love to see like when I want to do that right before before I'm stepping out of my ship. I want to know what the content is. You know what I mean? Ahead of time, So I agree with you 100%. If you forget to do that, that could be fatal, even if it seems like it's breathable, but you don't even realize that only a certain amount of time can you be out in it. You know what I mean? There's all types of things that I would love to give us warnings, or, you have to pay attention to that, or else, you might pass out and fall out on the surface and be laying there,
and I mean, right now they just have, safe or not safe or whatever.
I want the composition.
I want the composition, and it's a standard of most space games, right? Like whether you're talking about Elite or No Man's Sky.
Mhm.
You can see the composition, and we used to be able to do it in Star Citizen. I hope they bring it back.
I agree.
I want the composition impact the exploration gameplay that's even illuminated for 1.0.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go looking, I should have to manage my exploration on the basis of the composition.
Mhm.
Composition should inform the type of science and exploration I'm going to do on the ground. Everything ain't for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And every type of scientific exploration isn't for every planet or moon. I want there to be a real difference between what I'm looking for and looking at on Ignis as a moon of Pyro 5 versus some of the others we're about to talk about. So I absolutely agree with you, Jade. And I think that even though we have heard from Richard Tyrer on what 1.0 will look like, I think that the community can still push to say, picking up some of these things that you've named in ways that are compelling for us in terms of gameplay and experiences. And to your point, don't forget that you already have some of these systems that are there. Just let us use them, make them more meaningful.
Absolutely.
Just real quick on
sure.
the visual aspect of just this whole moon system. You can see from any of these moons, obviously you're going to see Pyro 5, but you're also going to see all the other moons in Pyro 4 if you're on any of these moons, and vice versa. If you're on Pyro 4, you're going to see all those moons as well if you look along the plane of the
That's
ring.
very cool. Very cool. Real quick, some shout outs. I meant to do this after the commercial break. SeriousFun, thank you for the resub. Envoy, thank you as well for the resub. 34 months. Instigator, as always, thank you. Good to see you here. And as always, Thrakazogs, 39 months. Thank you all for your support. We don't want to miss our wonderful supporters of our stream. Thank you, guys. Jay, would you read viewer, please?
Yes. Viewer. Viewer is the sixth moon of the gas giant Pyro in the Pyro system. Thanks to an increased greenhouse effect in its dense carbon dioxide atmosphere, it is unusually warm for a moon so distant from its sun. Its carbon-rich soil supports forms of vegetation that utilize crystalline carbon as their base structures. Before the system was overtaken by outlaws in the early 27th century, these plants were a popular subject of research among botanists.
KJ, what you think?
I like it. I've been there. I want to spend more time there. Oh, and as far as the names of all these, you may or may not know, but they're all just different words for fire. So it kind of goes with the whole pyro thing. I mean, I could see, going back to that 1.0 presentation, the science, I could definitely see them maybe putting some risky science missions here, to go back and study those plants. They've definitely, put a hook in the lore for that kind of gameplay. And so that's why you might, look at this as just a boring moon at first, but there may be more in the future that they're going to do with this.
Yep, definitely for gameplay. Serious, anything about Viewer?
Yeah, I'm more hostile about it than Jade. Green and yellow from a distance. You get there, it's like brown Ignis with more wind. I didn't like it at all, but maybe I'll appreciate it later.
That's fair. Again, Jay just highlighted the fact that here's the other clue for future gameplay research being a factor there, right? Which I think that, to Jade's point, there are some people say I'll never have a reason to go to Pyro. There are some people who've only heard about the criminal element, the unlawful element, but CIG made it very clear that when you go into these systems, that there is risk versus reward with everything. And if those of us who are explorers, we're not maybe going to Pyro because of the PvP sides of it, but there are other opportunities for things to do, and they may be riskier ventures, but if the reward is worthwhile, and the reward doesn't have to be necessarily financial, it could be information or something that allows you to do further in the game, something that you can do for crafting, whatever the case may be. Players may find that they have a lot of reasons to visit these remote locations beyond just going to Checkmate Station or to any of those places. Serious, would you read Fuego?
Yes. Fuego is the fifth moon of from the gas giant Pyro 5. Relatively temperate but still cold. It has a mostly carbon dioxide atmosphere with small percentages of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, and oxygen. High amounts of iron sulfide in its soil gives its surface a yellow and black appearance. Infamous smuggler group headhunters often utilize Fuego as a stash point for goods during their nascent years in the early 2600s. So, yeah.
Yeah, Jade. Let's get Jade's scientific end of it first. Jade, any thoughts about Fuego?
Yeah, Fuego. So this is another temperate moon, and in real life, there are mechanisms for this. They gave both of these moons a carbon dioxide atmosphere. We can have moons that are warm because of tidal heating, and because of that carbon monoxide atmosphere, there's, the heat's not going to escape into space and leave you with just this frigid moon, even though it may be, further out of the habitable zone of the star. So again, this is a case where CIG actually brought a little bit of science in here. And, just in general, we know of 20 exomoon candidates, which are candidates of moons around exoplanets, planets around other stars, in real life. So there's probably way more moons in the universe than there are planets. I mean, Saturn has 146 moons. Jupiter's got like 95. So the fact that they're putting all these moons in the game is great. I think a lot of people may prefer living on moons just because of getting out of the atmosphere of like a habitable moon. It's going to, it's not necessarily going to be as big of a deal if you've got lower gravity. So for just your gameplay, there might be a reason you want to live on a moon.
Okay. Serious?
Yeah, I loved Fuego. I thought Fuego was one of the more compelling experiences I had in the Pyro system. When you approach it, it looks at first like you're looking at a brownish green planet with these gray mountainous ridges all over, right? But what those really are, clouds. And so the way that the cloud layer functions when you get underneath it is it's super low and consistent and broad compared to other cloud layers and other cloud formations in other places that we've seen. So you have this really narrow band between almost hitting the ground with your ship and being below the cloud layer, right? It's really, really low. And so I thought that was super compelling and interesting that the moon had formed like that, and that you could be up in the cloud layer very quickly, and that it was as distributed in the ways that it was across the planetary surface. I liked it a lot. You would get these momentary, relatively rare hits of sunlight that would come through the cloud layer because it was so thick and broad and consistent. The other thing that is interesting, given all that, were these pockets of green elements in the hills and formations and rock formations. It made me want to investigate what that was. You scan it, you hit your scan button, and you're looking to see if you're seeing any elements or any rocks. It wasn't really that, but that green represented something, and it made me want to explore it. So I really liked Fuego a lot.
Okay. Before I read this last moon, I just want to ask this question: is there any There's nothing inhabiting these moons in the game, are there? There's no NPC things, or are there any on any of the moons? Are there any settlements or anything, or just on the planets?
There are settlements on Pyro 4, which is technically a moon of Pyro 5. And those settlements do have NPCs walking around.
Okay, all right. I was just curious.
I don't remember whether there are settlements on the moons of Pyro 5 that we're talking about now or not. I actually don't.
Yeah,
remember.
I didn't see any, but I also went to all of them in an early Evocati patch where maybe they weren't all in yet.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I don't see CIG not putting some things there for us to discover.
Yeah.
It may not have a point of interest marker, but I could see them definitely putting things there.
Yeah. And guys, I'm asking that because some of you all know that when we got our build last year after CitizenCon, there were a lot of things that were not in Pyro, and then things have been added since. And so I just wasn't sure. I've heard people talk about settlements and things on the planets, but I hadn't heard anybody make any comments about moons. So I was just kind of curious whether or not there was anything there. A good shout out to our good friend Sergeant Grimm, who's here. Grimm, thank you so much. Q, also saw you here from Carbon Tales earlier. Good to see you as well. Thank you for being here with us too. The last moon here is Pharaoh. It's the fourth moon from the gas giant Pyro 4 in the Pyro system, a hotbed of seismic activity. Pharaoh experiences frequent earthquakes that disturb its deep oceans of brackish water. The moon has an unusual ecosystem that thrives both on the surface and under the sea, supported by the carbon dioxide and nitrogen in Pharaoh's dense atmosphere. Jade, Pharaoh.
Yeah, Pharaoh. It's one of my favorite moons of Pyro 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I could definitely see, again, this would be a place that people, it's picturesque. People might want to build a base there. But we have these frequent earthquakes mentioned in lore, and I don't know. I mean, I can think of what they might do with this. Like, if you build something with the Maelstrom system, like your settlement gets rocked by an earthquake, and now you got to put it back together again, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you don't want to build on Pharaoh, but yeah, like I would like to probably build there if it weren't for the earthquakes.
Yeah.
And it's another place that's got a thick atmosphere. It's got a sea, and again, carbon dioxide and nitrogen. And for people that are like, well, how do these moons have thick atmospheres? If you don't know, in our own solar system, we have Titan, right, which is a planet-sized moon with oceans of hydrocarbons and a thick atmosphere. So yeah, it can happen.
Yep.
Well, and also, I noticed, Griff, we don't have all of the moons of Pyro 5.
I only went with the ones that they had descriptions of in the roadmap. That's why.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just
let the community know we could be here all night.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about these things. Yeah,
that's right.
There's Vatra, there's a Dare. I'll just mention them.
Yeah, mention them. Go ahead.
People yeah. So there's Ignis, Vatra, Dare, Pharaoh, Fuego, Ver, and Pyro 4. So go out and explore them whenever you have access to 4.0.
There you go. Okay, so those are the moons.
Yeah, for real quick, for Pharaoh,
Sure.
for me, just really quick, when you approach it, it has this broad slash of across its equator of like what looks like liquid, right? And that has a slash there. It has a slash closer to the pole, and that makes the approach to it look compelling, right? You start thinking, well, what is it like to land at the border of that liquid area and the land, and what would it mean to be there? And when you go down there, it is very compelling. I do remember when you talked about settlements, Griff. I remember that there was what CIG was calling a derelict outpost on Pharaoh. So there are some settlements or former settlements based upon the lore that are at least on some of these moons. Yes.
Okay. I know.
And that derelict outpost is at that border between the oceans and the land. So
okay. I was going to say, Jade, you were talking about the earthquakes or the seismic activity, I should say. For those of you who've played Sea of Thieves, there's an island that you go to that has seismic activity, and I hate to say it is one of the most fun and also one of the most scary things to do in the game. And I would love for them to have some type of seismic activity take place. This random thing. I think that would be great. It's interesting when they do that in the game. But we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see if they go there.
it makes sense too from a scientific standpoint because these ones that have, temperate climates, right, are going to be temperate because of tidal heating. Well, what's tidal forces, right? They create
constantly pulling
earthquakes.
earthquakes. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, you might have a beautiful place, but it's constantly rocked by earthquakes.
Yeah.
Kind of like California.
Yes, what's the trade-off, right? There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's hit this next section here for outposts and colonization. Jade, would you read that one, please?
Sure. So, for outposts and colonization, a small home for AI, I guess, or NPCs to live and shelter. They consist of a central hub and a few optional internal and external modules. They provide the basic necessities to support a small group of people for an indefinite amount of time.
Okay.
And they look really good. I mean, the people that love Star Wars and Tatooine, you're going to get your wish in Pyro.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we've been waiting for this for quite a while, Serious. To Jade's point, that is probably Jade hit probably one of the most iconic films that people think of when they think about visiting a world where there are people who are living. And of course, we've got also the visions of places that are, glass and steel and look amazing from a futurist standpoint. But then there's this colonial side of things, right, where people are these small settlements. Did you get a chance to visit any of them? Because I know we've got some basic ones in Stanton, but obviously these ones in Pyro take a different turn.
Oh,
Yeah, we visited a lot of them. Most of them have unique names, right? Some of them are derelict, but most of them have unique names. They have NPCs there, and you do imagine a smallish hive of scum and villainy, right? But you also imagine people who are out on their frontier just trying to make it work, right? And you go in and you want to support the commodity store and you want to support the exchange that they have, because what you're seeing is people like on the edge who need your engagement as a trader in order to make it work. That's what it felt like.
Okay.
Right. And so, Jade mentioned it earlier that there's some inconsistency in places where you're seeing NPCs who have the ability to breathe where we don't yet. Right. So CIG's got to address that. But the layouts of the settlements, if CIG was going for this idea in Pyro of a real frontier, really living on the edge, really being outside of the supports of the UEE, these settlements do, in fact, reflect that in my experience. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Jade.
I was going to say the visual language they used for these is great and diverse. You have, different types of these colonial outposts. They don't all look the same. Right? Which I know, if people look at in Stanton, if you look at outposts, they all kind of look the same. Pyro, it's not that way. I mean, they have a much broader set of I guess they call them prefabs or whatever. But it's great. I mean, a lot of them have farms, like so it just gives you that thing, that SeriousFun was talking about, of you kind of want to support these people. They're living rough on the edge, trying to farm. Maybe you need to start doing some trade with them, help each other out.
Okay, cool. Variety sounds good. All right, Sirius, that one's on you.
Pyro space stations. Adding rundown rest stop stations to the Pyro system, which provide basic services such as repair, sustenance, and commerce. This is a short sentence for a big category, right? And we could spend as much time as we've spent on the planets, I think, on the stations. I have found the stations to be incredibly cool inside and out. When it comes to, for example, Ruin Station, which is a place that you can start in 4.0 as it's currently configured. Ruin Station is out by Pyro 6 or Terminus, right? Ruin Station is in lore controlled by Xenothreat. Right? But Ruin Station is massive, right? And what were the words Jade used? The visual language, right? That CIG has used in these stations. Um, from the time that we had the tech preview and um, we got an understanding of the layout of these stations to the time now where we're able to go in, get in our hangars, have the experience in terms of audio visual, the compromised systems like the ASOP terminals, the compromised hangars, but then you get out, you fly away, you turn around and you look at what in lore Pyrotechnic Amalgamated was able to accomplish before it all went wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they went bankrupt. These stations are, and the settings that they're in, for me, are super compelling. So.
Okay. Jade, what about you? Space stations.
Yeah. Again, I've heard this criticism, and I think it's from a lot of people that haven't even been to Pyro yet, that it's just Red Stanton, right? Or it's just a reskinned Stanton. No, it's not. And I mean, it starts even with just the space stations that you spawn in at. They are massive compared to what you see in Stanton. I mean, so Stanton stations are big, but the playable area, the walkable area in them isn't. In Pyro,
Right.
It's almost 1-for-1, I think. I don't know. It's close to that. It just feels like you're in much bigger stations. When you include like the contested zones, maintenance areas, all that stuff, and then all the hangars, it feels a lot more like you're really in a big space station. And I think people enjoy that.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. All right, you guys are making me jealous because there's so much I didn't see hearing all this stuff. Jeez, oh Pete. Is this what's next? Yeah. Fauna, the quasi-grazer. These large, warm-blooded herd animals were originally discovered on the vast plains of Quasi on Terra. Most notable for their unusual method of carrying their eggs on their underside, the quasi-grazer has become one of the standard seed animals, and they can be commonly found on most terraformed planets in the UEE. And it wasn't too long ago that CIG, even though we'd seen a concept of what this animal would look like, they showed us that there are a variety of these animals. There's the winter version and I can't remember what there are like 4 versions of it, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Of the quasi. And are these, I don't know, are these in the game? In 4.0? Are they there?
If you look in general chat on Discord, you'll see that I put one in the back of my Pisces.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
they're there, and a good place for people to go spot them is Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter on Microtech, around there.
Oh, okay.
It's a
What
really
you'll
good
see
place.
there is you'll see the ones that are, because of the cold, they're a little bit more shaggy.
But we're talking about in 4.0, right?
Yeah, in 4.0. They're not in 3.23.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, all right. So they actually are out there. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and the shaggy ones aren't around Calhoun Pass because that's like a temperate area.
Right.
But they're probably not far away because there's that tundra area as you go over to the Shubin mining facility that's near there. So you might be able to see both in a very short span of time because there's 2 different biomes that sort of intersect around there.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Okay. I was hoping that, I don't know, I want the quasi-grazer to be a very peaceful, loving animal, but I also want it to be that if you mess with them, they'll herd you and mow you down, stampede you. That's what I really want. I do. Because I know they're going to be people who are going to mess with these things, and I want them to catch it if they do. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, they are peaceful, unless you mess with them. And I used peaceful means to get the quasi-grazer into my places.
Cool.
I didn't do anything that would upset them, so they didn't mow me down.
Good. Okay, that's the quasi. Jade, on you. New missions, location repair.
Yes, implementing new missions that introduce engineering gameplay into the persistent universe, first appearing in Pyro's Outpost. Players will be tasked with going to the location and fixing wind turbines, relays, moisture extractors, or solar panels. This is done by repairing pipes with your multi-tool. charging batteries with the new charge drain feature, or replacing broken components in the networks that are broken or missing.
Okay, so we know charge and drain got pulled, so that's going to have an impact on this particular thing. But is any of this gameplay in there? Because I think without charge and drain, are we able to do any of this stuff?
I've seen the places where it will take place, but we can't do it yet.
Can't do it yet. Okay.
I have not gone in the direction of missions at all. Okay. I have strictly been about sightseeing and spaces and places. I'm leaving the missions for when 4.0 goes live, because missions contribute to rep, and rep, right, it's going to get wiped until it's live. So I am waiting for the wipe and then 4.0. So hopefully these are available to us, but I haven't checked into this at all.
Okay. Not a problem. Yeah. Not a problem. The next one.
I'm looking to see in the chat if anybody has done any missions. Okay. But I'm not seeing anybody say anything about it.
Okay. Jump points. SeriousFun. Would you read that one?
Jump points. Implementing the first jump point into this persistent universe, connecting the Stanton and Pyro systems together. Includes necessary vehicle items and functionality, the jump points themselves, and their inner tunnels. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So let me tell you my jump point story before you guys go into this. Okay. So I decided to wait a little while because, we had seen other, earlier previews of what it looked like to jump through. And then I know CIG did some enhancements to it, worked on it some more, talked to some of my Evocati friends who were telling me about their experiences. So I said I was going to wait. So last week, I finally decided about 1:00 in the morning. I said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. So I jumped in. I was at R Corp, which is where I base out of, and I jumped in at 315p because I was told that 315 was a bit of a struggle. I said, well, let me try it out. And I get there, and there's about maybe 5 ships that are there that, waiting. Everybody's kind of waiting, I guess, for their moment to go through. And as I got closer and closer and I'm watching the thing, I'm kind of mesmerized watching it. And then all of a sudden I saw kaboom, got blown up. So I missed my first opportunity to go through it. Came back the next day, tried again. This time I made it through. I got through, and several people were watching me in Discord as I was going through, and they were cheering for me. And as I was going through, I think I was probably like maybe 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 2 minutes and 40 seconds into it. And I'm seeing the color of space change, and I can see the pyro colors coming to me. And I hit a curve that was just a little bit too much for me. And I could tell I was not going to make it. And I got ejected. Now, what I saw was my ship still had the glow going behind it as if it was moving, even though I killed everything. I couldn't turn off the ship. I could not stop. I couldn't get out of my seat. I could bring up the star map and I could see the system. I was evidently kicked out somewhere in Pyro. I could see all the planets and the stations and all this stuff. Not planets, but on the star map. But I never got past that. So that was as close as I got to getting into Pyro. So you guys can share your stories about maybe the first time you went through the jump points and how you felt about it.
Well, the first time I ever went through the jump point was in that first test where we were in Evocati and everybody was rushing from Area 18 to the jump point, and the legendary Mr. Trash was the first one that made it through. I was in the group right behind him, and it was just, back then we didn't have the visuals that you see now, right? It was just a gray tube that you went through. Yeah, and so just looking at that and comparing it to what we have now, it's really great to see just how just game development, right? Is does this thing technically work? Okay, cool. Now let's make it look pretty, right? And they've really made it look pretty. The first time I went through the current jump point, right? I just remember approaching it. Actually, I remember landing on the station, the gateway station outside it to try to refuel. And then I gone inside because I wanted to see if I could spawn a ship there because the one I brought didn't have a big fuel tank. And so I looked out and I saw it open, and I got like Deep Space Nine vibes of like, they really went for it. They really were influenced by DS9, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely can see the DS9 Dominion gateway influence on how the jump point reveals itself. My first time through, I was committed to this idea, and right, wrong, fair or unfair, I said, let me take a newer ship through just to see if, being newer, being gold standard, newer, impacted it at all. I didn't want to take a ship that, they hadn't worked on in a while. So I took the Zeus through, and my experience was not one where I had to open the jump point for the first time I went through. When I arrived, the jump point was opened by someone else. So I just had to approach, and then I got pulled through. And one of the things that helped me get through was, you have these pillars that when you run into can ostensibly damage your ship, and people are trying to get around them. And I had a better chance going through when I made the pillar horizontal and went under or over it than trying to go around it. So every time I went and saw a pillar, I turned so that I could go under the pillar or over it.
Right.
And your point, there's a moment where you go from the blue of Stanton to the red oranges of Pyro, and you know that you've sort of gotten to the part of the tunnel where if you get ejected, you're going to get ejected not in Stanton, but in Pyro. And for me, one of the most compelling things, and I look forward to you having this experience the right way, Griff, is when you get to the end of the tunnel, you actually do see out of the tunnel before you come out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And then you come out and you're going at a very high speed. You almost have to slow down to make sure that you don't run into anything or go off in a direction you don't want to go off too far. And it's a really cool, active experience. All the things that I think we wanted out of it are present. I did see Evocati folks who went through the tunnel experience earlier on in a way where it seemed much harder and much more difficult to navigate. I think they've made it simpler since then, and a lot easier to navigate, which I appreciate. But it may depend on the ship that you're in, right?
Okay.
I have only gone through in the Zeus, and we know that RSI is a refined, superior experience. So, if you're flying something else, who knows what might happen to you when you go through it, right? Better if you just fly RSI.
I was laughing at all of your earlier setting us up for the show about you getting the newest ship, and I'm like, oh, he just wanted to fly his Zeus. That's all that was about. It didn't mean anything. That's all that came down to in the end. Yeah,
the Zeus does handle really well in the jump point, though. So
it really does.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. When I took the 315, I think Colossal, he did it during the testing, and he said it wasn't, they needed to work on it because it was really rough. So I think they had done something by the time I got there, because when I went through it, it was challenging, but it was not impossible to fly through for my first time. It was definitely challenging. I said I could see how this is going to be really cool to do this each time. That 3-minute window is enough time to make your hair stand on your arms a little bit, because you're waiting for that end to happen. So it was a great experience, even though I didn't get through. And unfortunately, even though I was at the Pyro end, when I woke up, I was back in Stanton. So I never did get a chance to come out and Pyro when it was all said and done.
One of the things I want to do, which I haven't done yet, and I don't know if the Stanton or Pyro and Stanton Gateway stations have refueling working right now, but I want to take starter ships. I want to take an Aurora. I want to take a Mustang because, to me, that makes the most sense to make sure they can all go through because they're the most common ships. Most people don't have a million ships. They have their starter package. So I want to make sure those can go through.
That's a great.
Yeah,
that's a great.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does. Okay, we're almost there, gang. Here's the big enchilada. Server meshing V1. The initial implementation of server meshing enables multiple servers per shard to improve load distribution and facilitates navigation between two solar systems. When I was testing we were in Ep.230 and also live, I want to say the count that I saw for players was 380. I don't know if you guys saw anything lower than that or higher than that when you guys were testing, but that was the number that almost every time I logged in, that was the maximum amount of people that I saw on the server. And even though we know that they've 380,
381.
Yeah, and even though we know they've exceeded that in past testing, I'm wondering if that is going to scale up or whether they're finding that as being the sweet spot for now. To get ready to go into Pyro. I don't know, guys. I'm just asking. This is just throwing this like, spaghetti on the wall kind of thing. But the game ran well when I was in it. And I know different people have had different experiences, but I was in servers that were almost maxed out. I didn't feel any performance issues. When I flew out to the Pyro jump point, I was in R-Corp. My frame rates, my server frame rates were around 20, about 18 to 20. 21, and then when my client rate was running around 50, 60 sometimes. Once I got into space, everything was fine. When I got to the jump point, everything was fine. So for me, I wish I could say, that I did make it through the jump point and get into Pyro, because then I could talk about that a little bit more. But that much of the experience for me, I felt was much improved and went fairly well for me. I know some other people may have had some troubles, but for me, I didn't run into anything that seemed weird. What about you guys when it comes down to this, transitioning between these servers and moving around?
I didn't experience anything that would be reflective of the hiccups that I had observed other people dealing with, right? Whether it was crossing over server transitions or anything like that. The thing that helped me notice that server meshing was working was along the lines of server player count. And the number of people I was seeing everywhere. There's just a lot more people, which was exciting to see. Yeah. There wasn't a major knucklehead factor, so I didn't feel the negative side of a bunch of people. I just saw a lot of people running around trying to see what was going on. So when I feel like this is one of those things where it's like a good referee in a game, and when you don't notice them, they're doing a great job. And so I remember thinking back, because I was looking, I think I was looking for either Captain Jones or you. And that's when I saw how many people were in the server. It was 380, 381, somewhere in there. And for me, that was the only feature that stood out to me. The idea of how many servers they had and moving across those, I didn't really feel in any negative way, and I haven't since I've been in, which is exciting. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll say this: it spoils you for 323 because it's hard to go back when you've had smooth performance in 4.0, and you've seen 380 people, and then you're going back to this. It's like a step backwards, right? You're going back to 1-star system, no jump points working, no server meshing, and you're just, you're dealing with 3.23 stuff, right? Yeah. So I would say that, that's really good that CIG's made it so smooth, especially again, comparing it to when we first started testing it at Evocati. I really do feel that I don't know. I feel like this should probably drop to everybody out right after IE is over.
Okay. Yeah, we're close.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, we're close.
And I know you want that to happen, Jay, because you got bets on this thing. Let's go.
Hey, you know what? I do have bets on it, but that's just for me. That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
What's more important to me is that the whole community can come in and join us.
Yeah.
And be there. And also, I haven't had. You mentioned negative experiences. I haven't had any negative experience during the 4.0 testing when it went to wave 1. I know a lot of us at Evocati are like, oh, there it goes the neighborhood. People are going to just start blasting each other at the jump point. Didn't happen. Hasn't happened.
Not really.
Not yet, at least. Yeah.
And like I said, my instance that happened, I mean, I've been in the game long enough to know when it happens. I say, oh well, I just go on, because the next time I came back, there was no occurrence of it. I had no problems, and it's just that just happens in the game. It's not a big deal. All right, the last thing we've got here, actually, there's one more I'm going to add to this afterward. The mission system refactor, reworking the underlying mission system to become compatible with server meshing, allowing for easier creation and maintenance of mission content. This last year, after CitizenCon last year, CIG stated that CIG's focus was going to become on mission content and information there. And even though it's great to get all this new real estate, I want to present this to you guys. The real estate's great. But if I'm going to make sure I say this the right way. Players are going to look for something to do. And we know that there are going to be those organic encounters, things that happen when you run into another player, things that'll happen when people start to build up trade lanes. Those will be those organic things that just happen. But there is still that side of the game where people want to be able to, you mentioned this earlier, SeriousFun, build reputation, right? Dealing with the gangs, being able to purchase things from certain settlements, things of that nature. This we know. Tying all of this in. This is why we opened up the show at the beginning and we talked about when I said sometimes I think people don't understand the importance of server meshing and how it impacts everything else in the game. That this is it's not just about how many people can we get on a server or even performance, but even the mission content. All of this stuff is tied in together. I personally hope that this is the enchilada hurdle for CIG. That server meshing, and we know that they're still beyond static dynamic, but I'm hoping that server meshing is the thing that kind of brings things together that says now the things that we've been talking about and showing you guys, we can begin to put into the game. To me, that's what I'm hoping server meshing means, in the game. What do you guys think in relation to this mission refactor, system refactor?
Well, mission refactor, system refactor, transit refactor. I want all the refactors, right? And I think that we have to be careful about the mythology that says that server meshing in and of itself in its first iteration means that all of these things will be finally perfectly fixed.
Right. That's true.
That's not what it means.
That's right.
What it means is server meshing in its first iteration is the basis, is the necessary foundation for these things go in the direction that CIG wants them to go in, with an expectation that they will become better and better over time. Right. So those two things are distinctions with very clear differences. And when the elevators ain't perfect because you come into 4.0 and there's still an elevator problem. Well, they need to be better, right?
Yeah.
But I don't expect to go from where we are now to perfect because server meshing exists. That being said, I do expect ongoing iterations of server meshing, and as a result, ongoing improvements with these refactors, including the mission system refactor. I'm very excited about that. And to be frank, Star Citizen devs are excited about it as well. I feel like they've got content that they have waiting in the wings for us that are waiting for this refactor to get to a certain point that we can begin to get those experiences.
Yeah. And that's why these categories are listed under core tech, to your point. They're the core technology that's needed to build upon. And again, this said V1. This is version 1, right? This is our tier 0, tier 1 of server meshing. But again, I agree with you. We've seen the potential of where they've gone. We know that CIG has tested the amount of people that can be on servers at over 700, over 1,000 people. Jay, do you remember what the highest number was that they tested?
Oh, yeah, we tested 2,000.
2,000, right? So
what Benoit said was that, what we were testing was beyond 4.0 stuff.
Right.
So, they probably locked in the idea that 380, with 4 DGSs, 4 dedicated game servers, was going to be what they launched with 4.0 with. But just as, we originally had only 25 people in Stanton way back in the day, that number is going to go up over time as, as we perfect the tech.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. The last thing I want to hit on that we don't have on our list, guys, is, and then we're talking about things that we're starting to see happen in 323.320. Are we in 323.3 324? What are we in?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
323.
I can't even keep track of what we're in anymore. Okay.
I don't think there's going to be a 0.4.
I'm just trying to remember where we are. Between that and between 4.0, we have seen reverberations about economy. We've already seen that and heard about that. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing as we move forward, CIG has announced that there will be a wipe that will be coming up with 4.0, and most of us expected that. You know, that's not a shocking thing for us. But I am curious about the idea of economy becoming more solidified. Earlier this year, CIG did some adjustments to ship pricing in the game. I'm talking about in-game pricing, not monetary pricing. We saw some shifts happen there. My understanding is that torpedoes prices had increased. There's a lot of relation to fuel, and all these things. So do you guys think that CIG will start to now, because of this big idea of commerce between these two systems, do you guys think that CIG is going to now start kicking in with the economy team and giving us some ideas of what real numbers and real time factors will look like? Because there are a lot of people who've been talking about time and the economy.
I think so. And it goes back to something I've been saying now, really since we got wind of 1.0, like way back before, a while ago, was that this march towards 1.0 or road to 1.0, we're going to see them try to get things more in line with what the game's release is going to be. And I know people think, 1.0 is going to be many years away, but you have to start, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel that starts with 4.0, with Pyro. And then as we get these other systems that have multi-system trade, and all these systems have, at least in lore, they've got different things going on in them that would affect their economies, and why something that would be profitable in one wouldn't be in another. So I look forward to it.
Okay. Serious?
Yeah, I think that they've got great telemetry and great data on in-system trade, right? And how that might go. Now they're going to collect data on between system trade, right? Inter-system trade or intra. I can't remember which one it is. And as they get that data, I think they're going to take some swings, right? Some of these adjustments that we're seeing now are the beginning of taking some swings, using that data to make some choices, to test some things out, to see how players react, to see what players' experiences are. And then I think they're going to continue to take some swings with the economy and eventually settle down on an approach that's reflective not only of what they want to do, but what the data and the telemetry tells us about how we function, right? And because they know what's coming down the pike. They know how they expect Nyx, for example, to sit economically between or on a continuum relative to Stanton and Pyro. They know how they want Castra to be, and they know what they want Terra to be. So knowing what they want those systems to be and what they want those systems to do, I imagine that the type of swings that they'll take in terms of adjusting the economy will be to get Stanton and Pyro properly positioned and ready for in the next step for Nyx, right? So, and they'll see what it looks like to have 3 systems in play, right? But I think, we'll continue to see some adjustments, and the player base will react to those, right? You see people now who are going, well, if I got to pay millions for my torpedoes with my Polaris, but in order to have a crude Polaris that's effective to take down the Idris, I'm really only paying myself out in the halves of millions of dollars. It may not be economically viable yet to take this Polaris out, right? Yeah. I'm watching people take their Polarises out, and I'm not ready to take mine out because it looks like a losing proposition right now. In fact, probably should take it out now before we do the white.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But going forward from there, it will be a real decision to bring the Polaris out, right? Whether it's fuel, whether it's replacing weapons, and that's what I want it to be. I want it to be a choice replete with consequence to do that, because there are economic factors that make bringing that ship out. It's got to come out for a real reason, right? Not out here just floating around, looking around with the ship that expensive, right? Right?
I remember people
So
saying they were going to do cargo missions in their Polaris, and I'm thinking, yeah, good luck with that. And then now, now you see it's 1 million UEC for like repair costs. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
that
very
shit's got to
true.
come out for a real reason in partnership, right?
yeah,
And I'm excited about that. That doesn't make the Polaris any less valuable to me to be a part of what I'm doing, right? I will be on the lookout for those opportunities, because the flip side of that is CIG's got to work with us, and players have got to work together or work in such a way where those opportunities really do present themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it ain't every day. It ain't every opportunity.
Right.
And that's okay.
Danger Hobo just said something in chat
Mm-hmm.
about 160K repair on my Taurus, just backspace. The thing is, Danger Hobo, I would stop doing that if I were you, because they're eventually going to probably take that option away. Right? But you won't be able to just backspace your way
It's going to
to getting a new ship. Yeah. So I don't backspace, because like, if you think about it, if all we could do is just backspace, there's no need to call for a medic to come and get you. There's no need for personal transport beacons.
It's going to change.
So it's something that will change at some point, I think. And people should probably get used to it now, so they don't cry later when they take it away.
Because it is coming. Guarantee you that it is coming. Good point. We've got some questions, gang. We got a few questions this week. So let's see. Make sure I get the right ones first. Let's see here. This is from yes, Citizens for Pyro. Oh, Jade says yes, Citizens for Pyro with Chooch. Okay, I got that one. This is
Citizens for Prosperity now, though.
I know.
Did you go to IE yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see the sign?
Yes.
They're gonna try and take over the Nix system.
I know. I saw that.
I expected you to talk about that first thing. I was shocked.
No. This was a 4.0 show, not a 1.0 show.
I was waiting for you, but I was waiting for you to get on and go. Yeah. Forget Pyro. Let's talk about.
I was like, oh hell no.
Yeah, we will definitely have that on the docket for next week's show for the IAE. Let's see. Shimpasta says CIG has stated that they are using the transit system for jump gates. We also know elevators and trains use the same system. Do you feel CIG should have made the transit system a priority, since it causes so many issues and is used for jump points?
I think that's a reasonable submission, and it's the right question. The question is, have they made it a priority? And if they haven't, why not? Right. Yeah. I don't believe they haven't. And if they have, how are they prioritizing?
Yeah.
My guess right now is that they are properly locating the transit refactor in the course of all the things they want to get to us in the 4.0 branch. Right. They know. A lot of these devs are backers. A lot of these backers play. They know that the transit system is inconsistent at best, sucks at worst. And to Shimpasa's point, when it works right, it's transformative, right? So my sense of it is, I'm not there. I'm not Chris Roberts. I'm not on the team. But my sense of it is that they have prioritized it in and among all the things that they're trying to do for us. And I think they recognize how important it is. I just, that's the sense that I get. It can't come fast enough, though.
Yeah.
I hear you on that.
Yeah.
It cannot come fast enough.
Yeah. I would say to you, Shimpasta, too, I had this conversation a couple of other days. We were talking about the elevators, right? And, you know, how long the elevators have been an issue in Star Citizen. And I challenged myself a few years back when this whole subject came up about the elevators and why are they broken. Instead of asking the question, why haven't they fixed the elevators? The other question I've asked is, why did they decide to do it the way they did it? And so far, CIG, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, whenever they decided to do something that seemed kind of out there, there's some reason behind it. I have no idea why they feel it is important for elevators to be physicalized the way they are. I have some general ideas of why they may be. There are other games that we play. I remember the excitement of going into Elite Dangerous Odyssey. and playing that, but being disappointed when I got into an elevator, realizing that I could not get in the elevator with SeriousFun. My elevator is just for me. Multiple people with multiple floors cannot get on the elevator. Is that the reason why they physicalize them? Is it something? Is it a test bed for something else, such as the jump points? I don't know. Maybe someone else does. Maybe somebody here has some great ideas. Okay, I'll come back in a second. But my point is that something that most of us feel it's so easy. Why haven't they done it? The question, I think that's a question to ask, not why haven't they fixed it, but what is the issue that these, and I'm talking about beyond the fact that, oh, we'll get to it later, because elevators have been an issue for 8-9 years. I'm saying, what is the greater reason for why this is an issue? Go ahead, Jade. What were you going to say?
So the elevators are part of the transit system, and they were the first transit system that we had. The train system, the train tram system, that's all the same system that was based off of the elevator, which is why quite often when one is broken, both are broken, right? Yeah, when you look at it from that standpoint, they had to be physical because that was the foundation to make the physical trains and trams that we have.
Yeah. And most of us, the blocker for it either is that it prevents us from doing something in the game, right? If it's the elevators, right? We can't get to our ship. If it's the trams, why do they have to put these trams in here? Why can't we just go straight to the spaceport, right? I mean, there's all these different, and that comes to time. But there's evidently a tremendous, something is tying in with the game. I don't know what it is. And maybe, like I said, maybe some of you guys know what it is, as to why we would seem that there's this difficulty and why they chose to do this with elevators. Now, maybe somebody here knows game development and knows, is there a way to do elevators so that they magically pop groups of people onto multiple floors without making them physicalized? If that's the case, then I would be saying, why don't they do that? But I don't think it's possible, because you guys know when we're in a building and you're going down from level 4, 3, 7, you are going past those floors. There are people on those floors that literally have to get on the elevator. And so I don't know that there's a magical way of doing that. Maybe there is. Maybe there is a way to hand-waving way of doing it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think Chris Roberts wants the magical way.
Yeah, I'm
real, because if you had it, then why not just have teleporters? Why not just beam me somewhere?
And that's my point. Like, one of the things, remember when we first went to Levski? Remember, that was one of the highlighting points of the elevator, that it was physically moving and we could see it, right? So that's what I'm saying. There are reasons for why it's there, right? But I
appreciate the situational. Yeah, I hear you on the game development systemic reasons, right? I can tell you that tactically, though, and practically, I appreciate the situational awareness, right? In small ways, right? I remember when we were trying to figure out where everybody was, where we were trying to get ready for Siege of Orison. And I could see people coming up the elevator at Crusader, right? And all right, we've got 2 more people. They're coming up the elevator now. Now we can all get ready to get on this transport and go out to Siege, right? I could see it. Right. I like the physicalized nature of that. And I can imagine that expressing itself in a dozen different ways when you're in a PvP or PvE situation, when you want to do scanning, right? When you want to do all these things. I think physicalizing those things and being able to then predict where people are going to be on the basis of their physicalized
in
presence.
Real time.
Right. It changes the game. And to just extend Jade's point, if you don't do that and you do like instanced or teleporters or whatever, I think you've changed what Star Citizen's niche is. Star Citizen's niche is physicalized experiences, because then when you start doing teleporters, then I want to see teleporters for everything, everywhere, all the time. Because if they make sense in one context, they make sense in most contexts.
Okay.
Right. So.
It's just a question, but thank you. That was good stuff, guys. Good. Thank you, Shimposter, for that.
We appreciate that.
Other than that, that is it. Yeah, those are the questions that we have for today. Want to say thank you to everybody who's here, who joined us today amidst this conversation. We know there's a lot of anticipation for 4.0. And we want to encourage you to test out 4.0. It went back up for a little bit. If it goes back up to PTU again or EPTU, jump in, do what you can do in there, have some fun with it.
It's up right now.
Is it up now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So if there you go, it's up now. Let's talk about what we've got coming up for this next week. Jade, would you talk about Thursday? Serious, you talk about Saturday, and I'll talk about Sunday.
Sure. So every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific.
Your time.
We do Soul Talk, which is where you can come in and you can talk with us about the things that went on in the verse or outside the verse in the Star Citizen community every week. And you can also ban Fastcart for his jokes. And it's usually a pretty good time. We have a good group of people that are regulars that come, and we love new voices to come in and have their say too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Serious Fun. I'm going to actually throw a loop on you here. Sorry.
I hear you.
Yeah, I'm going to put this up now because I zoned out and completely forgot. Yeah. Okay, I'll do the thing on this one, though. Next week, as you guys may have already heard, is going to be our virtual bar citizen that we sponsor. It is themed around both CitizenCon and IAA 2954. It'll be next Saturday. There are 2 sessions for this. For those of you who've never been to this before, Virtual Bar Citizens began back during COVID when we were no longer able to gather locally to meet with other backers in the Star Citizen community. And so we did it virtually. And it basically over time grew into having over 100 and sometimes 130, 140 people who come out. CIG staff often drop in, and we basically have great discussions together like you would at a local bar citizen. And for many people, they don't have access to being able to go to these locations, even now post-COVID. So we've continued to do it. So next Saturday, November 30th, beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern time, they'll last for 4 hours. We'll be talking about both CitizenCon, as I mentioned, and IAE 2954. There will be a 1 hour break between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern time, and then a second session will begin. Now, those sessions are identical. They're not different. So if you're a morning person or if the hours are convenient for you, those of you who are in Europe, if you want to jump in at that time or wherever you may be, we've had folks from Germany, Japan, Australia, South America, Canada, everywhere. Folks who come in and sit in on this. Thailand. Yeah, we've had all over. Okay. Your opportunity to meet with other backers and maybe opportunity to talk with people from CIG. So that'll be next Saturday. There's the QR code. You can click on that. It is done on Zoom. There is a registration for it. So you do need to register to let folks know that, so you can get the link to know exactly where to go for this. But that'll be next Saturday. Again, beginning for the first session at 3 a.m. Eastern. And then the second session will be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then next Sunday, we will have, as Jade just mentioned a few minutes ago, our IAE 2954 review. After we wrap up after the full days of going to the convention center, if and when you can get in it, we're going to be talking about the good, bad, and the ugly of the IAE 2954. And hopefully you guys will join us. Get to talk about a lot of the new ships and concepts that CIG has showed us at this particular convention as well. And we'll have a great discussion wrapped around that. And then we'll be we'll be going into December, gang. End of the year.
Get over to IAE and rent some of those ships and check them out.
Check them out.
Be sure to do that.
Check them out. You guys have any predictions about anything? You think they're going to surprise us with anything? Or you think it's just going to be the stuff we know about for the rest of the thing?
I mean,
CIG, yeah, go ahead, Jade.
No, I was going to say, when you say know about, do you mean know about
the stuff that they announced, the stuff that they've announced. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
I think there'll be a surprise.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I'm experiencing CIG is tripping a little bit. I feel like they're tripping because they had a what they have today. They had a IAE video part 2 or whatever today that they dropped.
Right.
And they put the Airwolf theme in there.
Yeah.
And so I knew they were talking to my age group because Jade and them young people don't know about Airwolf.
Airwolf, yeah.
Right? I'm going to ask you about it after the show.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
They dropped Space Wolf. and they put a ship in there that we haven't seen yet.
Yep, that's true.
And so I'm like, you can't buy it, you can't get it yet, but they're talking about it. That's new in my experience with CIG. I'm not sure what's going on. I think they're just having a lot of fun right now post Citizen Con. But guess what? We need to see these ships that they're showing us and quit these teases. IAE is the place to drop them ships. Let's go.
That would be very cool if they decided to drop that particular one. I'm sure there would be people who are excited about it. I was impressed by what I saw. I was like, oh, it actually looks kind of cool. I don't know if I would buy one, but it definitely looked kind of cool. So, you know.
Well, and the manufacturer's day for that ship was today.
Yeah.
And that ship didn't drop. So I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, that was a dirty tease. I agree with you on that. Dirty tease. Okay. Well, anyway, we're going to wrap this up. I want to say thank you to Captain SeriousFun and to JadeStarwatcher, both very knowledgeable and very helpful this week, giving us some insights to 4.0. Get in, test it this weekend. If you have access, definitely check it out. I might try to jump back in. Maybe I'll try to go later on tonight again and see what happens if I get blown up again and try to navigate through the jump point. But anyway, thank you guys as always. Don't forget to check us out on our social media. Like and subscribe wherever you see Soul Citizens. You can find us everywhere. Hope you guys continue to enjoy IAE throughout this week. Keep an eye out on things. We'll see what happens with CIG does. We are going to do a raid on Queen Pawns-a-Lot. This is a new player to Star Citizen. So when you guys get out there, she says she's a noob and she's just getting started. Send some love over there. If you like what you see, let her know you came from Soul Citizens. Once again, Jade, SeriousFun, thank you guys so much for everything you did tonight. And till next week, we'll see you guys later. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Peace, love, and soul. We'll talk to you soon. Ciao.